It was a warm July morning in 1969, just days after the world had watched Neil Armstrong walk on the moon. While most Americans were still talking about space, a quiet, soft-spoken bank teller named Theodore John Conrad was plotting something very different. At just 20 years old, Theo worked at Society National Bank in Cleveland, Ohio. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't aggressive. He was the kind of guy people barely noticed, polite, punctual, always in a press shirt. But inside, he was obsessed with one thing: getting away with a perfect crime. Friends later told investigators that Conrad had become fascinated with the 1968 movie The Thomas Crown Affair, a stylish heist film where a millionaire robs a bank just the thrill of it. He talked about it constantly, said one former classmate. It was like he saw himself in the character, except quieter. On Friday, July 11th, 1969, Conrad walked into the bank like it was any other day. He counted cash. He took his lunch break. He smiled at coworkers. But before the end of his shift, he calmly placed $215,000 in a brown paper bag, the equivalent of about $1.7 million today, and walked out the front door. No mask, no gun, no getaway car. He just left. By Monday morning, when Conrad didn't show up for work, no one suspected anything at first. But then the vault came up short, very short, and just like that, he was gone. The moment the missing money was confirmed, panic hit the bank. Internal audits were rechecked. Surveillance logs were reviewed. But the truth was undeniable. Theodore Conrad had simply walked out with a small fortune in broad daylight. The Cleveland police were called in first. By the end of that same day, the FBI had already joined the case. There was no forced entry, no alarms, no accomplice, one former federal agent said. Just a 20-year-old kid and a paper bag full of cash. Agents searched his apartment. His room was spotless, too clean. The few clues left behind were cryptic at best. A movie poster of the Thomas Crown Affair, some bank memos, and a collection of records. There was no sign of a rush escape, no goodbye letters, not even fingerprints on key surfaces. Everything pointed to one conclusion. He had planned this for months. For weeks, the FBI tracked every possible lead, bus terminals, train stations, even nearby airports. But Conrad was already gone. It was like chasing smoke, one investigator said. We were always one step behind. If even that, posters went up across the country. His name was listed on every agency bulletin. They circulated a black and white photo of him. Clean-cut, thin face, a slight smirk, as if he knew he had just gotten away with it. And in a way, he had, because while agents hunted, Theodore John Conrad was already building a new life. While the FBI searched from coast to coast, Theodore Conrad had already crossed into another life. Within days of the robbery, he vanished into the fabric of America. No calls, no letters, no sightings. He didn't run to a foreign country or hide deep in the woods. Instead, he did something no one expected. He blended in, under a brand new name, Thomas Randall. Conrad quietly relocated to Massachusetts, just outside Boston. He found a modest apartment, picked up odd jobs, and eventually built a completely new identity, one that felt ordinary. He didn't live like a fugitive, one retired agent later said. He lived like your next-door neighbor. For decades, that's exactly what he became. Thomas Randall got married. He started a family. He worked as a car salesman, then later in country club finance. He paid his taxes. He made small talk with neighbors. And no one, not even his closest friends, suspected a thing. Back in Ohio, the FBI never stopped looking. Year after year, agents reopened the file. They followed hundreds of leads, interviewed old friends, even questioned people who had only briefly crossed paths with him in college. But the trail always ended in the same place. Nowhere. By the late 1990s, the case had gone cold, and Conrad, or rather, Thomas Randall, had settled into life as a quiet, respectable man. He had pulled off what countless criminals dream of, a clean getaway, a second chance, and total reinvention. But time, as it always does, was running out. For over 5 decades, the name Theodore Conrad faded from headlines, but not from FBI files. Though the case had grown colder with each passing year, it remained open. What agents didn't know was that the man they were searching for had been quietly living less than a day's drive away. By 2014, Thomas Randall was retired, living in a quiet suburb near Boston. He was well-liked in the community, friendly, responsible, and always willing to lend a hand. No one ever suspected that behind his calm demeanor was one of the most wanted men in Cleveland's history. He even had a daughter. She knew him only as the man who taught her how to ride a bike, helped with her homework, and made pancakes on Sundays. To her, he was just Dad. But in 2021, everything changed. Randall had been battling lung cancer. As his health declined, he grew quieter, more reflective. Family members noticed a shift. He began organizing papers. He withdrew more than usual. And just before his death, he said something that shook those closest to him. He told the truth. "We weren't sure what to make of it at first," said a family member. "It sounded unreal, but the more we looked into it, the more it added up." After he passed away in May 2021, federal investigators received a tip. Someone had connected the dots between Thomas Randall and Theodore Conrad, two names that, for decades, had never shared a line in any database. Agents reopened the file. They compared signatures, birth records, and hospital documents. Then they looked at photographs from 1969 and at Randall's recent ID. The match was undeniable. The man who had eluded the FBI for 52 years was dead, and he'd never been far. When the truth came out, the reaction inside the FBI was mixed, shock, disbelief, and, strangely, a sense of closure. "He got us," said one retired agent. "Plain and simple. We chased him for decades, and he lived a quiet, comfortable life right under everyone's nose." For those who had spent years working the case, it was humbling. Conrad hadn't escaped to some remote island or foreign country. He had simply become someone else, and done it well enough that no one ever thought to look twice. Back in Cleveland, the news made headlines all over again. Reporters revisited old case files. Former co-workers at the bank recalled him as polite, a little quiet, maybe even charming. What struck most people was just how normal he had become. "He lived like anyone else," said a former neighbor in Massachusetts. "He had a routine, took care of his lawn, waved to us in the mornings." For his daughter and wife, the revelation was something entirely different. "He wasn't perfect," said someone close to the family, "but he was kind, gentle, loving, and we never knew." There was no trial, no arrest, no dramatic takedown. Just a quiet ending to a 52-year story, one that no one had seen coming. The FBI officially closed the case in late 2021. The file, once thick with leads, photos, and theories, was sealed. And in a strange twist of fate, the man who spent his youth idolizing the Thomas Crown affair had become something even more rare. A real-life mystery who got away with it, almost at the very end. In the end, Theodore John Conrad didn't live as a fugitive hiding in fear. He lived as a father, a husband, a neighbor, a man who smiled, paid his bills, and disappeared into the most ordinary kind of life. And that's what made his story so unforgettable. He didn't leave chaos in his wake. There were no shootouts, no high-speed chases, no coded letters or daring escapes. Just a 20-year-old bank teller who walked out the front door with a bag full of cash and never looked back. For the FBI, the case became a quiet reminder of humility, of how even the most detailed investigations can overlook the simplest truths. He didn't run fast. "He ran deep," said one former agent. "He found stillness. And in that stillness, he vanished. The money was never recovered. No one knows exactly how much he spent, saved, or gave away. And after 52 years, maybe that no longer matters. What matters is what the story became. The tale of Theodore Conrad isn't just about a bank robbery. It's about identity, about reinvention, about the lines between right and wrong, and what happens when someone crosses them not with violence, but with silence. To this day, true crime communities still debate his motivations. Was he a thrill seeker? A romantic idealist? A criminal who got lucky? Or a quiet rebel who lived out a movie fantasy? One thing is certain. He wrote his own ending. And he did it so well, we didn't even know we were reading the story.